I never imagined that a stack of unpaid HOA fees could ignite a firestorm that left my home in ruins and my spirit teetering on the edge of despair. Until the day Mrs. Meredith Caldwell, known in our quiet cul-de-sac as HOA Karen, marched onto my property with her high-heeled boots clicking like gavel strikes, and served me what she gleefully called her justice. From the moment I heard her nails scratch across my clean windowsill, I felt the weight of every heated neighborhood argument, every whispered threat she'd lobbed at me since I moved in 18 months ago. She'd lectured me about my lawn, my garden, even the color of my door. But when she discovered I was 30 days behind on our dues, she seized her opportunity to play judge and executioner. I remember that dawn, the pale light revealing her silhouette as she handed out eviction notices and signed demolition orders she'd forged herself, claiming unsafe structure and environmental hazard. She laughed as the county bulldozer arrived, and I watched in horror as my life's work splintered beneath steel treads. My walls, once filled with family laughter, collapsed into a pile of dust and broken beams, while she stood by taking selfies, her smug grin lit by the glow of her phone. Grief turned to rage, but I had nowhere to go, and no defense against her self-appointed authority until a chance storm drove her back to the wreckage later that afternoon. A thunderclap jolted her from behind, and as she stumbled, I saw the glint of something half buried in debris, my grandfather's old sheriff's badge, a tarnished relic I'd inherited and kept locked away after I'd retired from the force years earlier. Heart pounding, I retrieved it and approached her, fingers trembling with memory and resentment. The moment she saw that star-shaped badge in my palm, her smug mask cracked, and I spoke with the calm authority honed over decades on the streets. "I'm Sheriff Jackson Hale, HOA Karen, and you just committed felony property destruction and impersonation. Step away from my property." Her face went ashen, and I could see doubt flicker in her eyes as she fumbled for her phone, perhaps to call her cronies. Instead, I gently placed the badge on the rubble and watched as realization sank in that the power she'd wielded so cruelly was a lie built on fear and unchecked privilege. In that seismic instant, everything shifted. The next hours blurred. Neighbors gathered, whispers turned to gasps, and calls were made to the real county sheriff. As the police tape went up around the debris and her self-appointed orders were torn down, I felt a fierce vindication swell in my chest. But I wasn't done exposing every layer of her arrogance. That night I scoured public records and unmasked her twisted vendetta against dozens of residents who'd missed a fee or painted a fence the wrong color. Armed with a dossier of her fabricated fines and illegal fees, I hosted an impromptu town hall on my front lawn, the only stand still standing in the wreck. Under the flicker of string lights, I revealed her schemes to a crowd whose shock transformed into righteous outrage. Murmurs rippled through the neighbors who'd once cowered under her scowl, and one by one they backed me, demanding restitution for their own bruised property and bruised pride. The following morning I delivered the files to the county prosecutor, my badge pinned to my chest, a symbol not only of my history but of the community's reclamation of fairness. Mrs. Caldwell, now stripped of her fake authority, stood silently at the edges of her once dominant realm, the weight of every lie she told pressing down on her like the rubble that still littered my lawn. She had no words when officers cuffed her for fraud and coercion, only her furious tears as she realized she'd crossed the line from petty tyrant to criminal conspirator. In the days that followed, my neighbors rallied to rebuild what she'd destroyed. They brought hammers, paint, and laughter, transforming my house into a mosaic of support and solidarity. I found myself humbled by the generosity of people I barely knew, each gesture a reminder that community is more than bylaws and late feasts, the bond that holds us together when darkness descends. As my walls rose again, stronger and more vibrant than before, the real badge on my chest felt lighter, its duty redefined not as power but as promisito protect, to serve, and to keep justice alive. I stand here today in the rebuilt foyer, golden sunlight filtering through new windows, staring at the spot where she once stood triumphant. And though the scars of demolition remain scorched wood, uneven bricks, they map the path from destruction to renewal. So share your verdict. Was I right to use that badge to bring her down, or should I have sought mercy for a woman driven by fear of change? Your voice defines our collective truth. Let me know if justice was served, or if lines were crossed in the fight for what's right. Reconstruction breathed life back into these walls as neighbors pitched in with hammers and paintbrushes, their laughter echoing where jackhammers once roared. I guided salvaged timbers into place, each beam a testament to resilience, While Mrs. Caldwell watched from her rental car, her eyes hollow with regret and something like envy at the unity she tried to shatter. In the weeks that followed, my rebuilt home became more than a structure. It became a beacon of collective strength. Every evening I'd stand on the new porch, finger tracing the badge that hung on a nail above the doorframe, and remember the fear that once drove Karen's cruelty, and the fear I'd felt when confronting her. That shared vulnerability forged an unexpected empathy in me. A reminder that beneath her tyrant's facade was a woman battered by her own insecurities. When the county trial convened, I sat in the front row of the courtroom, the badge tucked inside my suit pocket. Neighbors filed in behind me, their presence more powerful than any single testimony. As the prosecutor detailed Mrs. Caldwell's forged documents, false citations, and ill-gotten demolition orders, I watched her shoulders slump beneath the weight of her exposed lies. Her defense attorney tried to paint her as a well-meaning albeit overzealous volunteer, but the evidence was irrefutable. She'd abused her position to terrorize a community for petty grievances. When the judge read the verdict guilty on multiple counts of fraud, coercion, and property destruction, the courtroom erupted in silent relief. Mrs. Caldwell lowered her gaze, tears slipping down cheeks that once curled in contempt. After sentencing, I approached her in the holding area. I laid a gentle hand on her elbow and quietly offered that she seek help, that her fear of change had fueled her cruelty. She nodded, her eyes brimming, as if the humanity I'd shown was the only absolution she could hope for. Meanwhile, the HOA board was dissolved by county order, replaced by a democratically elected committee, whose charter I helped draft to prevent future abuses. We penned clear bylaws with built-in checks and community review panels, ensuring no single person could wield unchecked power again. I declined a leadership role, instead volunteering as an impartial advisor to mediate disputes, armed with the memory of how swiftly order can tip into tyranny. Across the street, the Martinez family, whose home Karen had also targeted for a minor paint infraction, hosted a barbecue to celebrate the new HOA. Children chased each other through the yard where rubble once lay, their giggles weaving through the scent of grilled corn. I sat with neighbors I'd barely known before, sharing stories of lost heirlooms uncovered from the debris. Mrs. Patel's porcelain vase, Mr. Wong's garden gnome, each reclaimed piece, a symbol of what we refused to lose, our dignity. In quiet moments I revisited the emotional sting of betrayal, how a community fractured under Karen's reign only to come together stronger than before. I realized that justice isn't merely punishment but restoration. Restoring trust, rebuilding homes, and reaffirming our shared responsibility. When the local paper ran a cover story on our renaissance, they titled it "From Ruins to Rebirth: How One Badge United a Neighborhood," a headline that felt grandiloquent yet true. I read it on the front step, the morning sun casting long shadows across freshly planted flower beds. The article quoted me saying, "Our greatest strength is not in our bylaws but in our willingness to stand up for each other." My words resonated beyond our cul-de-sac. Neighboring communities reached out for guidance on rewriting their own governance. I found myself traveling to town meetings, sharing our blueprint for fair, transparent homeowner associations. In those auditoriums, I spoke not as a sheriff or homeowner, but as a neighbor who'd learned that vigilance and compassion are the twin pillars of community. Mrs. Caldwell's fate remained a cautionary tale. She served her sentence and volunteered in a rehabilitation program for conflict resolution, her transformation gradual but sincere. On occasion she'd write to me, apologizing for the pain she'd caused, and I'd respond with encouragement, mindful that forgiveness can be a powerful form of justice. As seasons changed, the rebuilt Craftsman house stood unrecognizable from its former self, its fresh coat of sage green, white trim, and rose wreath ivy climbing the porch pillars heralded a new chapter. Inside, I'd set up a small display near the entry. The old badge, a piece of shattered window glass, and the wooden sign painted by my daughter after the rebuild, inscribed with "Stronger Together." Visitors often paused to reflect, and I'd guide them through the story of destruction and renewal. Late one autumn afternoon, I found Mrs. Caldwell in the community garden planting lavender. She looked up, her silhouette softened by the sun, and offered me a trowel. I knelt beside her, planting lavender side by side, and felt that even in forgiveness there is labor digging down into the earth of our shared humanity to sow seeds of hope. Our lavender bloomed that winter against all odds, a fragrant reminder that beauty can follow despair if we nurture it. So now I ask you again. In the aftermath of fury and fear, does rebuilding count as justice, or should the scales have tilted differently? Share your verdict because every voice shapes our ongoing story of strength, unity, and redemption.